My name is Ethan Cole, and I have spent most of my adult life underground. Caves were never just rock to me. They were memory, pressure, silence, and truth. Stone does not lie. It records everything that happens to it patiently, without judgment. People are far less honest, and that is why, long before I vanished beneath the karst plateau, I trusted the earth more than civilization. The locals warned me about the cave for years. They called it the breathing stone. They said the mountain exhaled warm air at night like a living creature buried beneath layers of rock. Livestock vanished near the cliffs. Birds avoided the sky above it. Compasses failed without explanation. Radios filled with static the moment you crossed an invisible line. No one could explain it, so no one stayed long enough to understand it. Fear answered questions that curiosity refused to ask. I went anyway. The entrance revealed itself only after hours of searching, hidden behind a collapsed limestone wall, fractured too precisely to be natural. At first glance, it looked like a simple rockfall, but when I touched it, I understood. The breaks were calculated. Someone had wanted this place erased, not destroyed, forgotten. As I descended, my instruments failed one by one. The compass drifted uselessly, spinning as if confused by competing poles. Pressure sensors spiked and dropped without rhythm. A low vibration resonated through my ribcage instead of my ears, as though the mountain itself was humming. The deeper I went, the warmer the air became. The walls smoothed into repeating curves erosion alone could never create. After 6 hours underground, I reached a vertical shaft absent from every geological record I owned. I leaned forward, expecting darkness. Instead, warm air surged upward. The ground shifted beneath my boots. The fall was wrong. There was no violent pull, no panic, no sense of acceleration. It felt as if gravity itself hesitated, as though the world was lowering me carefully into something it had hidden for an impossibly long time. I landed on soft moss glowing faintly green beneath my hands. When I stood, I forgot how to breathe. Before me stretched a jungle illuminated by a golden artificial sky impossibly high above. Towering ferns swayed in heated air. Massive trees rose in layered canopies. The ground trembled with distant footsteps, slow and heavy enough to vibrate through my bones. Somewhere beyond the trees, something ancient roared, not in anger but in presence. I understood immediately that I had not discovered a cave. I had crossed a boundary. Time behaved differently in this place. Minutes expanded, hours dissolved. I stood frozen, afraid that movement might shatter the fragile logic holding this world together. The air was thick with moisture and unfamiliar scents drawn straight from fossil memory. Hallucinations do not carry smells. They do not vibrate beneath your feet. A shadow passed overhead. I looked up and saw wings broader than any aircraft I had ever studied. A living pterosaur glided across the false sky, its leathery membranes catching the golden light. Its cry was sharp enough to silence the jungle. Moments later, massive sauropods emerged from the forest, scarred, ancient, calm, feeding without fear or urgency. This world was not frozen in time. It had diverged, it had evolved, it had endured. As I moved forward, I noticed paths cleared too evenly to be natural. Stones aligned at deliberate intervals. Symbols carved into trees and rock with intention rather than decoration. Someone lived here. That realization unsettled me more than the dinosaurs ever could. When the light shifted toward deeper amber hues, I felt watched. Then I heard voices. Low, measured, human, but shaped by throats built differently than mine. They emerged from the forest with controlled movements and alert eyes. Broad shoulders, heavy brows, calm, focused expressions. Neanderthals. Every image I had ever seen in textbooks collapsed instantly. They were not primitive. They were precise. One stepped forward and raised an open hand. "My name is Eruk," he said. Though the words were not English, meaning carried through tone and intent. I answered with my own name. Ethan Cole. Saying it felt like confessing my existence to another era. Communication came slowly at first, then faster with patience. Their language was structured, layered, capable of abstraction and metaphor. Arik led me through the jungle along stone-marked paths until the forest opened into a city carved directly into black basalt cliffs. Water flowed through engineered channels. Light came from cultivated bioluminescent fungi arranged with architectural purpose. Children observed me openly, not with fear but with curiosity and analysis. There I met Esha, historian of the First Keepers. Her eyes carried centuries of observation. "You come from the lost surface," she said calmly. "Yes," I answered. "We have watched it for a very long time." They called their world Erukael, which Esha translated as the world that chose to endure. Over many cycles of the artificial sky, I learned their history not from books but from stone, sound, and ritual. Their ancestors had followed seismic whispers underground during the great surface extinctions. Where my species fled across land and sea, theirs descended inward, listening to the planet itself. Erukael was not discovered by accident. It was shaped deliberately over generations. The false sky above us was a vast mineral lattice that refracted geothermal energy into stable, life-sustaining light. Climate was balanced through stone and heat. Time flowed differently here, not slower but insulated. While civilizations above rose and collapsed in violent cycles, this world remained patient. The dinosaurs were never conquered. They were understood. Esha showed me resonance chambers carved deep into the rock, places where specific sound frequencies guided migrations without panic. Scent markers shaped territory. Observation replaced domination. When violence was unavoidable, it was mourned, recorded, and remembered as cost. I lived among the First Keepers for many cycles. I followed hunters who carried weapons designed more for redirection than killing. I watched healers treat wounds with knowledge refined over tens of thousands of years. Children learned by participation, not punishment. Mistakes were documented, not shamed. There was no currency, no hunger for excess. Value was measured in restraint. They knew about my world in detail. Stone records depicted surface history with disturbing accuracy. The rise of cities, the burning of forests, the poisoning of rivers, the endless refinement of weapons. Each civilization followed the same curve: expansion, extraction, collapse. Different names, identical outcomes. "This is why we sealed the passages," Esha told me. "Not because we fear you, because you do not fear yourselves." I learned then that my arrival was not an accident. The cave had responded to my presence, to my instruments, to my intent. I had been observed long before I fell. I was a test. The still circle was called after many cycles. Elders gathered in silence, not to accuse, but to evaluate. Arik spoke my name aloud, and hearing it echo in that place made my skin prickle. Esha asked the question that shattered every defense I had prepared. "If your world discovers ours," she said, "will it protect us or claim us?" I searched for an honest answer and found only one. "I don't know." Silence followed. Not anger, not disappointment. Assessment. Later, Arik guided me far beyond the city, into regions where even the false sky dimmed. We descended through stone corridors reinforced with bone and living crystal until sound itself seemed to retreat. There, beneath layers of rock and roots older than memory, something colossal slept. An apex predator from a forgotten branch of evolution. Even dormant, it radiated presence, power restrained by choice. "We could awaken it," Arik said quietly. "But power without wisdom ends worlds." That was when I understood the depth of their restraint. They did not lack weapons. They lacked the desire to use them. The choice they offered me was final. I could stay, allow my memory of the surface to fade, and live in a world that had already solved the problems mine still debated. Or I could return above, carrying a truth I could never prove, and a silence I would have to protect. I chose to leave. My departure was quiet. No ceremony, no promises. The path sealed behind me as naturally as stone settling into rest. When I emerged onto the surface, dawn painted the mountains gold. Only hours had passed. Search teams found me soon after. My disappearance became a near disaster, a cautionary tale. I told them nothing. I withdrew from public work. Research felt dishonest. Discovery felt dangerous. But sometimes at night when the world grows too loud, I feel the mountain breathe. And I know Arik and Esha are still there. Watching, waiting. Not for discovery, but for humanity to finally become worthy of restraint. The time I spent in Arukyle left marks on me that no surface doctor could ever diagnose. I began to dream differently. My dreams no longer followed linear paths. Instead, they unfolded like layers of stone, memories embedded within memories. I dreamed of the fall sky adjusting its color in response to unseen variables. I dreamed of herds moving as if guided by a single ancient thought. Most of all, I dreamed of restraint, not as a rule, but as a philosophy. Esha once explained to me that the first keepers did not measure intelligence the way my world did. For them, intelligence was not the ability to dominate an environment, but the ability to remain within it without breaking it. Survival without scars was the highest form of knowledge. I witnessed debates that lasted for days, sometimes weeks, over decisions that would have taken minutes on the surface. Whether to expand a living space, whether to allow a new migration path, whether to intervene in a natural correction or allow loss to occur. Every outcome was weighed not against benefit, but against balance. One cycle, Arik invited me to observe a ritual rarely shared with outsiders. Deep within a chamber grown from crystal and bone, elders recited names, not of heroes, but of mistakes. Generations of errors were remembered aloud so they would never be repeated. In that moment, I understood why their history had not fractured them. They did not bury failure, they carried it. The final days before my departure were quiet. No instructions, no warnings, only understanding. The first keepers knew that if I chose to speak, no force could stop me. Their trust was not blind, it was calculated. "You will protect us better with silence than with truth," Esha told me. When I asked what would happen if humanity changed, she looked at the fall sky for a long time before answering. "Then the stone will open again." I still carry that sentence with me. Back on the surface, I tried to return to a normal life. It was impossible. Every city felt loud, every decision felt rushed. Humanity moved as if chased by something it refused to turn around and face. I stopped publishing, stopped presenting, stopped chasing discovery. My colleagues assumed fear had broken me. In a way, they were right, but not the kind of fear they understood. Sometimes, when seismic reports cross my desk, I recognize patterns that do not belong to the surface. Adjustments, corrections. The quiet work of a world beneath ours, still watching, still waiting. Arukyle did not ask to be saved. It asked to be left alone. And until we learn the difference, the breathing stone will remain sealed, exhaling slowly into the night, reminding the mountain and me that the greatest strength a civilization can possess is knowing when not to reach for what it finds.